Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to this week's episode of the Office 365 DSC webcast. For this week, what we're going to be covering is something brand new we just introduced in the product that helps us better troubleshoot some of the configuration drifts that have been detected in Office 365. So what I want to look at right now is quickly take a look at this configuration here that I have. Let me just go in here. Let me zoom in a bit more like this here. So what I have is an SPO search result source that is going to go and create, well, my SharePoint Online result source in my admin center. I'm just going to go in and compile that configuration. So the configuration right now is called O365 tenant config. I'm going to compile this, provide in the credential for my global admin account, O365 DSC. That should compile fine. Now what I'm going to do is I just want to go in, first off, no smoke and mirrors. So I want to show you that there's no resource source called my integration source. If I go back here, I'm just going to go and initiate the deployment of that configuration. So start DSC configuration, the name of my configuration. So in my case, it's O365 tenant config. You can always find that just by looking at the name of the folder that was generated. We'll do a wait, verbose, and a force because I know I already have an existing configuration. I'm just going to let this run. Should take a few seconds. And the name of the source is actually called my result source, right? So that's the one that was defined in my file here. So my result source. So it's going to go in, load the PNP components that are required in the background to be able to go and create that source remotely. As I said, it should take a few seconds. Then what we're going to end up having is my source is going to be created, and I'm then going to go in and force a configuration drift. So by default, this is going to be scanning the local SharePoint site. This is how I have it defined in my configuration. I'm going to go in and change that to be a remote result source, and I'm going to pass in a service URL. So that is going to create a drift, as I said. Now, by default, when you use the desired state configuration engine, so the engine that actually does the checks is called the local configuration manager, short for the LCM, basically. And that agent, what it will do is it will do those consistency checks, which by default are every 15 minutes. And what it does, it effectively calls into the test target resource. Test target resource is a method that exists in every single resource. So there's one in the SPO search result source. And it's going to go in and call that method. That method is going to go and analyze the remote Office 365 environment against the configuration it has in memory, and it's going to return true or false depending on whether or not there's a configuration drift. But that function, really all that it provides you is information about yes or no your configuration is in the desired state. If it's not, you can always use the detail switch, which was introduced in PowerShell 5, but that will just tell you, all right, so the result source is not in the desired state. But what you really want to know is, well, why? What property of that result source is not in the desired state? We've just recently introduced a brand new resource called the EXO organization config. That resource exposes 64 different properties. Right? So imagine if all we're telling you is, yeah, no, your tenant is not in the desired state because the configuration, the organization config has a drift in it. Go figure what property in there actually has a drift. So we built a complete separate logging engine just for Office 365 DSC that provides you that nitty-gritty detail as to what exactly is it's not in the right value inside of your resource. So we're going to cover this in just a few seconds. So right now what I'm going to do is, all right, so my result source should be created. If I just go and refresh this here, it's right here, so my result source. Now if I go back to this here, I'm just going to clean the screen and I'm going to do test DSC configuration. Will take a few seconds because it needs to remotely assess the Office 365 environment, and it's going to come back as true, hopefully, because I haven't created the configuration drift yet. So it should take a few seconds and it will simply return a value true or false in this case. Now while this is assessing my Office 365 environment, I'm going to go in and I'm just going to modify this here. So it came back as true, right? So the environment is in the desired state. That was to be expected. Now, as I said, I'm going to go and change the local SharePoint to be remote, right? So I'm going to go in and change this here. I'm going to select the remote SharePoint. This is going to refresh the page and allow me to provide a service URL. I'm just going to go in and do HTTPS nick. And I'm going to save this. So we all agree that I am currently creating a configuration drift. My configuration says, my desired configuration says, it should be a local result source. And I just modified it to be a remote one. So there's a configuration drift here. So if I go back in, clean that again, do a test DSC configuration, this time let me just do a detailed switch. So it's actually going to tell me what resource is not in the desired state. Take a few seconds again. And this time around, it's not only going to return with false, but it's also going to provide me additional information. So the resource is the configuration is not in the desired state, and the reason for this is that the result source 8FA whatever, that's a GUID that I gave to the resource there. If I go in, take a look. So this one here is not in the desired state. So far, this is exactly what we expected. But the thing is, it's only telling me that this resource is not in the desired state. I don't have any additional insights as to what property of that resource has been drifted, if you want, that there's been a configuration drift on. So what I need to do in this case is I need to go in and open Event Viewer. So we've just created a complete separate event log for Office 365 DSC, as I mentioned. So let me just go back here. Now, what you're going to get is directly under the Application Services and Logs, there is now going to be a new category of logs called Office 365 DSC. Should appear in just a second. Looks like I haven't fed the hamsters on that server for a while. Come on. And we have it. So I had to stop the recording for a second because I forgot to actually launch Event Viewer as an admin, so that log wasn't showing. But there it is now, so Office 365 DSC. And then when you go in there, what's actually going to happen is if I go back and just rerun my test DSC configuration detailed, every time a configuration drift will be detected, I'm going to see an event being logged in there. And the structure of the event is an XML message that we have. And that XML message is structured in a way, so we can see that we have new events available. And it is structured in a way that allows you to get additional information about what exactly is happening in the background. So let me just launch Notepad here. And we can see that currently what it says is, all right, so there's a configuration drift event that was detected on the MSFT SPO search result source resource. The parameters that are not in the desired states are protocol. The current value is remote, but the desired value should have been local. The second parameter that has configuration drift on is source URL. The current value is HTTPS nick, but the desired value should have been null. How powerful is that? You don't get that out of the box with DSC, unfortunately. So this here allows you to figure out not only if you have configuration drift, what resource is actually causing the configuration drift, and what parameter inside of it is causing the configuration drift. And then at the bottom you have the full list of all values. So you basically have information about, all right, here's the resource that is causing the configuration drift, and here's what the desired values for all the parameters in that, that resource should have been based on the configuration. So again, extremely powerful stuff. So that will help everybody troubleshoot some configuration drift, right? So every time the consistency check is going to go and report that there's been a drift, you can now figure out exactly what setting has been changed. So on that note, I wish you all folks a good week, and I'll talk to you again next week.